Well, election season is upon us yet again, with the primaries coming soon. In fact, the Iowa caucus is coming up on the 15th of January and the New Hampshire primary on the 23rd. Well, you know what it really comes down to? We got to get to know who these presidential candidates are who have made it through the initial processes, who've managed to get enough support to potentially be people that you could see on your ballot. Now, I've got to do a lot of this research myself, get a feel for who the person is, and so I thought I'd put together my thoughts on each one of them over the next, say, week or so, including I've already done Nikki Haley. I'll be looking at Ron DeSantis. I'll be looking at Donald Trump. I'll be looking at Joe Biden, and I'll be looking at Robert Kennedy. So keep an eye out for those videos as I have the time to get them out. So, none of these videos are an endorsement, but just my initial take on the candidate, who they are, and what they stand for. And this is what I found out about Chris Christie. Christopher James Christie was born in September of 1962 in Newark, New Jersey. He graduated from the University of Delaware and earned a Juris Doctorate at Seton Hall University School of Law. After his education was completed, he joined a law firm and eventually was named a partner in it. He served as a county legislator from 1995 through 1998 and worked with the campaigns of both President Bushes. George W. Bush later appointed him as U.S. Attorney for New Jersey. While there, his office was praised for rooting out public corruption, with 130 convictions or guilty pleas from Democrat and Republican politicians alike. He ran for governor of New Jersey in 2009, defeating the Democrat incumbent. His first term was marked with spending cuts, capping property taxes, and, of course, Hurricane Sandy recovery. He was re-elected in 2013 by a wide margin. His second term resulted in Bridgegate, with some of his staffers convicted of conspiracy for closing 2 of the 3 toll lanes on the Fort Lee Toll Plaza. Theoretically, this was to punish the mayor of Fort Lee for not supporting Christie in the gubernatorial election, though there's no direct evidence that Christie himself ordered the action. The convictions of his staff were later overturned. Bridgegate is also cited as one of those significant factors that caused the implosion of Christie's 2016 presidential election campaign. He was also criticized for his frequent absences from the state during this period, owing, of course, partially to his presidential bid. During his time as governor, Christie did limit tax growth in certain areas, though he sometimes offset those losses by reducing the number of tax credits. He did not increase income, sales, or corporate tax. He made significant use of the line item veto to rein in spending and signed a payroll tax cut into law. He vetoed millionaire tax bills that would have significantly raised taxes on high-earning individuals. Democrats later dropped the proposal entirely when they took control of the governor's office, claiming the state was, quote, taxed out. New Jersey's credit rating dropped 9 times while he was governor. Public employee pension reform also passed under his leadership, though these had bipartisan support. For those interested, he was the governor who signed into law the legalization of online gambling. This was done to increase state revenues. He later signed a similar law legalizing sports betting. On education, Christie does support school vouchers and school choice, but also supported greater state-level control of the education system during his tenure as governor. He also approved 23 new charter schools. On the environment, he worked to reduce the size of New Jersey's equivalent of the EPA and to limit its authority. He did pursue alternative energy sources, though, including tax credits for green energy projects. Christie did have a long-running feud with the state legislature on the makeup and constitutionality of the state's Supreme Court. This resulted in long vacancies and temporary assignments to keep the court running. National issues, of course, are what those presidential candidates should be talking about, and Christie certainly delivers here. He called for a secure border and called any discussion of legalization of illegal immigrants premature. Conversely, he also stated that being in this country without proper documentation is not a crime, but a civil wrong. He places the responsibility of dealing with undocumented foreign nationals with Immigration and Customs Enforcement, not with the U.S. Attorney's Office. He has opposed giving local law enforcement officials the power to enforce immigration laws. Social issues results in some really interesting mixes, depending on your own viewpoints. He opposed same-sex marriage, but supported civil unions. He also states that homosexuality is an innate quality, not learned, and outlawed gay conversion therapy. He also opposed bans on gender-affirming care, saying it was for the parents, not the governor, to decide. Likewise, on abortion, he considers himself pro-choice but anti-abortion, and that it isn't the role of government to be involved. He did support a ban on partial birth abortion, calling for parental notification, and supported a 24-hour waiting period. Christie also supports legal abortions in the case of rape, incest, or the woman's life being in danger. He does not support the legalization of marijuana. However, he does say that the federal government should allow states to legalize it and thus not continue enforcement in those states. The next mixed bag is his record on the Second Amendment and gun control. Christie said that states should be able to determine their own firearms legislation without federal interference, chose not to defend a state law requiring proof of an urgent threat of violence before issuing a carry permit, and vetoed a magazine size limitation. He did call for a bill that would allow for involuntary commitment for mental health treatment of people who are not necessarily dangerous, but who, if untreated, may deteriorate to the point of harm. He also signed a bill banning bump stocks. On international matters, Christie has called for more aid to Ukraine, having visited Ukraine and President Zelensky this year. He has vocally criticized Trump and aligned politicians for splitting Israel and Ukraine aid apart, claiming they want to coddle Russian President Vladimir Putin. He called the attacks on Ukraine and Israel related, saying this aid is connected because these attacks are connected. There's no doubt that Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea are all working together to try and disrupt the world and create violence. He also called for more support for Israel. He is one of the few candidates who directly recognizes the Budapest Memorandum, saying we need to keep our promises. He's pursued Republican nominations for president in 2016 and 2024, offering to support Trump in 2020. He turned down the option to be Romney's VP pick in 2012 and generally kind of torpedoed his conservative credentials at the time by praising Obama's hurricane disaster relief response. A poor showing in the New Hampshire primary shot down his 2016 bid. In 2020, he worked as a Trump surrogate and for debate preparation. He did not support Trump's claims of election fraud. Moving on to 2024, Christie has been a loud and frequent opponent to Donald Trump, calling him out for avoiding the primary presidential debates. However, he also criticized the Colorado Supreme Court ruling that removed Trump from the ballot in that state. Most recently, Maine has declared that he did not get the necessary number of signatures to make the ballot, and thus struck him from their primary. That only leaves a write-in campaign as an option for him there. His performance in the debates has depended on the debate format. In the short answer versions of the debates, he tended to really suffer, being unable to condense his points to fit in the time allotted. However, when the field narrowed, he really began to shine. With more time to make and hammer home his points, he was able to be clear and draw some significant differences between him and his primary opponents. He frequently clashed with Vivek Ramaswamy in particular, and sometimes with Ron DeSantis. Overall, he tends to thrive in traditional debate formats, rather than rapid-fire one-line sound bites. Overall, he tends to have an excellent command of the topics, though, and is able to speak to many different areas authoritatively. He was, however, often combative, a trait that matches closely with both his New Jersey political roots and a certain amount of rough-and-tumble, no-holds-barred politics. So what do I think of Chris Christie? Well, he's a bit of a mixed bag. He has some positions I think he's really good on, and in fact, on a lot of the international stuff, I think he's got very good positions overall. But other ones, he seems like less of an ideal pick. I sometimes question his dedication to the Second Amendment. His position on abortion perhaps is not as fervent or well supported as I might like. It feels like he would be less principled on that matter, at least as of this point. He may have further on that I've not been able to find so far. On the other hand, he seems to hit some things right out of the park. He's called for a more secure border. Awesome, that's great. But then he strikes out by saying that by basically delaying the situation with those who are here illegally. As far as his appeal, and Chris Christie does have a lot of issues with who he appeals with and doesn't appeal to. The polls speak to that in significant measure. He is likely to be a decent draw for at least some bipartisanship involved. If somebody is sufficiently annoyed with both Donald Trump and Joe Biden, they can look at Chris Christie and see somebody who has had to effectively work across the aisle throughout his career in politics. He does have some strong positions and some weak positions, and sometimes it looks like he might be able to go along and get along, as opposed to the kind of the more rough and tumble feel on the topics that he is passionate about. In comparison to Trump, he is relatively mild. He does tend to get argumentative and combative at certain points in time, but is nothing compared to what Donald Trump is in that regard. Whether that's favorable or not is entirely in your view of the two candidates. Overall, though, as I said, Chris Christie has some positions that are good and some that are bad, at least from my perspective, and he's a little bit of a mixed candidate in that regard. Is he the right person for you, though? I hope this information helped you to decide. Let me know in the comments below what you think of Chris Christie. Did this information help you to understand him any better, or make up your mind on who he is and whether you're interested in voting for him? Let me know as well. Give me the old thumbs up if you want to see more of these quick rundowns of the presidential candidates. You have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you on the next video.